Hello and welcome to another tutorial. Today we're going to be using the software Motion, Apple's software, and we're going to be doing motion tracking and applying that tracking data to some text that will be on the screen. So what we have is a clip on a slider of some old flower pots, and we're going to be adding text to this. So let's start by adding some text. Simple as can be. Motion tracking. All right, let's talk about text for a minute before we get too into it. You'll see that we have an anchor point in the lower right, and this is the point from which your rotation will happen, and it's also the point from which your text will grow and shrink depending on the size. If you were to center the text, that anchor point doesn't move, but the text moves around it. If we're to do some right justification, same thing happens. We're going to leave it here in the lower right because we're going to be tracking against this flower pot, and that is right justified, so let's do the most logical thing. Now, if you were to do this the wrong way, the first thing you would do is jump in, add a keyframe, go to the last frame of the shot, add another keyframe, and position the text in the appropriate way. So there it is, snug up against the flower pot at the last frame, and we see it again snug up against the flower pot in the first frame. Now let's watch that in motion. This is terrible. You see the slider move is being done by hand, so that means it's not a perfect slider move. There's some ramping up, there's some ramping down, there's also some jostling in the middle there. And it makes for a terrible animation. If we were to remove the background video, you'd see that this motion tracking text is moving perfectly. And the problem is that the shot is not perfect. So what we are going to do is reset those parameters. And we're going to do this properly by motion tracking on the video footage. So let's get into it. Motion trackers can be found under Behaviors, Motion Tracking, and Analyze Motion. That's how we're going to start. And what it gives you is a little point on the screen that's going to be your motion analyzer. And what you want to do is find a high contrast area to drop this tracker. So let's put it right about here. That's pretty high contrast. You see over here we have a preview, and you'll see that we have this black area in the lower left, and the other 3/4 of this are sharp white. That should be fairly easy to track. We're going to add a couple more tracking points, and we'll use them a bit later. For now, we're just going to focus on tracker 1, but we're going to prepare 2 more. We're going to put tracker 2 over here on the satellite dish, and you'll see right in the center we have a nice dark triangle, and we can track against that. And we're going to do one more, and that third tracker we're going to drop over here on this kanji. So to analyze the motion, you don't just have to drop the tracking points, you also have to let the computer track those points. And it's very simple. You just click Analyze, and it will automatically start moving the footage forward. And as you can see, the tracking points are following the spot where we dropped them initially as the camera moves. This will take a little minute to round out, but once it's done, we'll be able to apply these tracks to the text. All right, we got 3 nice tracks. So let's just scrub back and forth and see what those tracks do. The one in the front is pretty much a straight line. That's not bad. And you'll see the one on the satellite dish is also pretty good. Where you start to notice a bit of detail is in the sign in the far background. It's going up and down. If you notice, there is a bit of a camera move. It's not a perfect slide. There's a bit of a jostle. There's a bit of an up and down to it. And this is why tracking exists. Now let's apply it to the text and see how that goes. Oops. What we're going to do is drop this next to the flower pot. And what we have to do for this text is apply a different behavior, and that is match move. When it comes up, it guessed correctly the source is going to be the raw. And we want to click this and select Analyze Motion. Now you'll see you have your option of trackers, and we want to do the anchor and the rotation and scale all to track 1. We're only going to do position, we're not going to do scale or rotation, so that won't have any effect, but I do like to keep them both on track 1 just to make sure everything's clean. Alright, let's see what happens now. Good golly, good gosh, that is nice. It looks like it is exactly on the footage. Beautiful. Now what's nice, you know I can't resist this, is that the 3D text works perfectly in this style. And we're going to go for flat graphic. Nah, let's go for Metropolitan, because I want to talk about something else. Alright. Now there's Metropolitan. A little too much text for one line, so what we're going to do is change the text to, I don't know, Hugo Weaving. Nice. Alright, and that is still tracked against the flower pot. I don't like how it feels a little too close to the background, so we're going to move it over a bit, and let's see how that goes now. Let's move it up off the ground and reduce the line spacing. Nice. That's just incredible. That's so beautiful. Alright, now let's make the most of those other 2 tracking points, and I'd like to get into something about 3D text to keep in mind as you do match moves with 3D text. We've got Hugo Weaving. Let's move that over and let's change that to, I don't know, Keanu Reeves. Yes, that's wonderful. Okay, now we're going to attach this one to the satellite dish. So we're going to change that to track 2 and that to track 2. Move the text over to the satellite dish a bit. And nice. Now here's the problem. We've got this separation between Hugo Weaving and Keanu Reeves. And it looks like this text is 10 times larger than this text. It should be smaller because it's further in the background. There are 2 ways we can do this, and there's a very good reason to make this distinction. The one way we can do this is to reduce the size of the font, and the other way we can do this is to scale down the entire text. Now, the first thing we're going to do is reduce the size of the font. And as we do this, take note that the detail in the font is disappearing the more we scale it down. Now you see how on Hugo Weaving we have this really nice border around the thicker parts of the text, and we've completely lost that on Keanu Reeves. So let's go back, let's reset the style to Metropolitan. There we are again, and we've got those nice details. Now if we go into scale, notice how even though it's considerably smaller, it still retains that detail in the text. We'll zoom back out. I'd like to move that a little bit more off the satellite dish. Oh, now this is just getting lovely. We've got Hugo Weaving, we've got Keanu Reeves. Let's do one more and we'll do it on this sign in the background. Who's next? Carrie-Anne Moss. Alright, again, we are not going to reduce the font size, we're going to scale this down. Now this one I would like centered because what we're going to do is put it over that sign in the background. So let's center that and let's move it over that sign and scale it down a bit more. Now, this is getting very hard to read, so I am quite tempted to change the 3D style to flat graphic. And another thing I'd like to do is this building is on an angle, so let's try to match that angle as best we can. There's 1, and there's 2, And this is not perfect. I'm just trying to go over the basics for this tutorial and give you an idea of what it might be like to add text in over a sign in the background. And you'll see that looks terrible, and the reason it looks so terrible is because we completely forgot to match that with Tracker 3. So we're going to drop that on Tracker 3, reposition it a little bit, and let's give that another shot. There it is. Now the name Carrie Ann Moss is perfectly attached to that building. The name Keanu Reeves looks pretty good up there on that satellite dish. Let's change them all to flat graphic. And Hugo Weaving, he's special. We're going to give him forged, so it looks like his name is written in steel, floating in the sky. Let's boost that font again, because he's Hugo Weaving. You do not mess with that man. And let's take them all off angle a little bit. We're going to do that way. And we'll do the same thing for Keanu. Just to add a little bit of depth to this. And I don't like how much that stands out, so sorry Hugo, you're getting demoted to flat graphic just like everyone else. Let's boost that a bit. And let's take a look at this now. Now that's just a lovely 3D motion track. Well, it's actually, technically it's a 2D motion track that we've applied to 3D text that gives it this feeling of full 3D motion tracking. I just want to do a couple more things before we close this one out. We're gonna add some filters, some really cheesy filters, but this is just for fun, so don't stress. First thing I want to do is add contrast. Now we're adding this to the entire group, so it will affect everything within this group. See how it takes all the text and the background? And we're gonna boost the contrast quite a bit. Let's do a luminance only. Get those blacks as black as possible without ruining the entire image. Next thing we're going to do is add a vignette. And we're going to make this dark as can be. Increase the fallout. And bring that size down a bit. Let's blur those edges even more. Just to show you what it looks like without the vignette and with. And the last thing we're going to do in our Tour de Stupide is add bad film. And we're going to crank the dust. We're going to crank the hairs. We're going to lower the jitter a bit because I think they go overboard with the jitter. Let's give it a bit more grain. That's too much grain. There we go. That's some nice grain. And let's take a look at this now. Oh my God, we've got our own Grindhouse titles. Fantastic. All right. That's that. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was useful. I hope this helps you get started a little bit in motion. Good luck. Enjoy.